seventh best third baseman of the 1960s was San Francisco Giant Jim Ray Hart. Hart was the furthest thing from a great fielding third baseman, but the man could hit. In 1964, he was a runner-up for the Rookie of the Year award, losing out to only fellow third baseman Dick Allen. He received MVP votes for the 1964, 65, and 67 seasons, and in July of 1967, he was named the National League MVP Player of the Month as he hit 13 home runs, had 30 RBIs, and had a batting average of .355. In the 5 seasons from 1964 through 1968, Jim Ray Hart hit a total of 139 home runs, had 447 RBIs, scored 415 runs, and had a batting average of at least .285 each season. Unfortunately, Hart's career was curtailed by chronic injuries, but there's no telling what kind of numbers this guy would have ended up with. The 6th best third baseman of the 1960s goes to New York Yankee and Atlanta Brave Clete Boyer. Clete was an outstanding fielder who in 1961 through 1963 led the American League in assists, putouts, and double plays, and then at the end of the decade in the National League, 1967 through 1969 led the league in fielding percentage. Despite those very impressive numbers, he wouldn't win a Gold Glove until 1969. Clete's best hitting season would be 1967, his first with the Atlanta Braves, when he would hit 26 home runs, have 96 RBIs, and score 63 runs. The 5th spot goes to Philadelphia Philly Dick Allen. Known as Richie while playing in Philadelphia, he would win the 1964 Rookie of the Year with 31 home runs, 91 RBIs, a league-leading 125 runs scored, and topped it all off with a .318 batting average. In 1966, he would finish 4th in MVP voting with 40 home runs, 112 RBIs, 110 runs scored, and a .317 batting average. In the 1960s, Allen was a 3-time All-Star that would have 85 or more RBIs 5 times, have 86 or more runs scored 5 times. He would hit over 300 4 times. His future 1972 season with the Chicago White Sox would result in him winning the American League MVP award. The second member of the Boyer family to make this list, coming in at number 4, Ken Boyer. Ken spent the bulk of his career as the team captain and cleanup hitter of the St. Louis Cardinals. He was a 5-time All-Star and a 3-time Gold Glove winner that in 1964 would win the National League MVP and play a large role in the St. Louis Cardinals winning that season's World Series. Ken would hit 20 or more home runs 5 times during the decade. He would have 90 or more RBIs 5 times during the decade. He would score 86 or more runs 5 times. And in 1961, he had a career-high batting average of .329. Ken finished his career with a lifetime batting average of .287, and he is a member of the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame. Despite the majority of his best seasons being in the 1950s, coming in at number 3 in the 1960s is Eddie Mathews. In the 1960s, he hit over 30 home runs 3 times, had over 90 RBIs 4 times, and scored over 100 runs 3 times. His best season in the 1960s, which was about his 5th best season all time, was 1960, when he hit 39 home runs, had 129 RBIs, and scored 108 runs. A very patient hitter, he led the league in walks 3 times, and in 1963, he led the league in on-base percentage. Despite his only 3 at-bats and his 1 hit, which would end up being the last of his career, let's give him a tiny bit of credit for helping the Detroit Tigers win the 1968 World Series. The next man on this list resulted in me getting a lot of disgruntled messages because I did not include him at all in my 1970s list. And I expect to get a lot of disgruntled messages for me putting him in the 1960s list at number 2, but coming in at number 2 is Hall of Famer Brooks Robinson. Robinson in the 1960s was a 10-time All-Star and a 10-time Gold Glove winner, as he led the league in fielding percentage 9 times. In his 1964 MVP season, he hit 28 home runs, had 118 RBIs, scored 82 runs, and had a career-high batting average of .317. He had over 80 RBIs 6 times and scored over 80 runs 5 times. His 100 RBIs and 91 runs scored in 1966 helped the Baltimore Orioles win the World Series that season, and in 1970 he would be the World Series MVP. His 2,870 games played at third base remains a major league record, and he also still holds records for third baseman for putouts, assists, and double plays. When you read about this guy and how he met his wife, how he would sell his own sports memorabilia to raise money for charities, how he would often, after games, not be available to reporters because he was out in the parking lot signing autographs for his fans, you really can't help but like this guy. The Chicago Cubs don't very often finish first at anything, but in Ron Santo, they had the greatest third baseman of the 1960s. Santo was a 6-time All-Star and a 5-time Gold Glove winner that led the league in walks 4 times and led the league in on-base percentage twice. For the decade, he hit more than 250 home runs, and his run production of runs plus RBIs was nearly 1,800. At the age of 18, Ron was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and given a life expectancy of just 25 years old. While the disease did eventually claim both of his lower legs, he wouldn't pass until 2010 at the age of 70.